Hello, Sonia. It is I, Beth. I was just thinking about the writing conversations we've been having about what is trashy and what is not trashy. And we've been applying it to shows and music too, but also writing. And I really wanted to show you some fun things and talk about why I consider them trashy. And we're going to start this video by acknowledging that I live in the middle of nowhere with my dog Bailey and my family. And how do I show you? There we go. In the middle of nowhere. And then we're going to walk over to my pole shed. But here in the middle of nowhere, what do I have sitting in my driveway? An RV, which is super trashy. 90% of the things I do on the planet are called trashy, and it's part of why I am so happy to reclaim things that are trashy instead of getting rid of the title. Because the title is still being applied, I might as well make it awesome and fuck everybody who's using it negatively. So there's one element of trash. Another is that even if I'm drinking a fancy local beer, because that's also who I am as a person, it's trashy to have a beer before 5 o'clock. And that ship sailed at 3 p.m. when I sat down to try writing fiction and instead ended up outside playing with my dog, which again could also be considered trashy due to circumstances. I didn't pee while I was inside, so now how am I gonna pee while I'm outside, which is super trashy. I accidentally turned off the video, which was probably for the best. I should have peed while I had the camera off. But it's super trashy to pee outside. Can I give you a nice view of the hills while I pee? There. It's not my finest moment to be peeing outside, but it has no consequences for anybody that are negative, except that it could be called trash. I am sorry, that was kind of ridiculous, but I feel like it's also related to my point. Look at those beautiful, not completely snow-covered hills, because we're having climate change. This is warm. This is unseasonably warm. And there's glare ice instead of snow and gravel because climate change has continuously melted and refrozen all of this winter moisture so that it is slick and slippery AF. And I think something else that came up when we were talking about like music and what's considered trashy and what's considered derogatory in general was related to that in the early 2000s and very late 90s, I was just like this dirty dyke, like not even 20 years old, probably between the ages of 18 and when you met me in grad school, going to these trashy dive bars and listening to artists who were playing with the same concept of people say we're all these horrible things. Yes, we are these things, but it's amazing, not horrible. So one of my favorite illustrations of something trashy and awesome is in my pole shed, which again is a trashy thing to have. Let's see if I can turn the lights on. No real guarantees. Oh, I did it. Look, you step in and immediately here is a grinder. And one of our tractors here, the small mini one that is for plowing, and that has suitcase weights on it back here in the blade. And for extra trash, sometimes I stand on this back blade when it needs to have more pressure on it to scrape ice to give it some texture so it's not so glarish and slippery. We have lots of other devices out here. We have a tiller because I do a lot of playing in dirt, which is kind of trashy. And you can see welding equipment back there, and the riding lawnmower, which is kind of trashy. And this lumber here is from my grandfather's land, where he had a lot of pine trees, and they had a mobile diesel-run lumber planer come out, and they cut down a whole bunch of trees and skidded all the logs and turned it into this lumber that you can see all back here. Which brings me to one of my favorite pieces of trashy nonsense, which is on this, our other tractor, Ford 8N, which I think is like a 40s situation tractor. Let me find a really trashy place to set my beer down for a minute. By which I mean awesome. I'm really happy that I just set my beer on the tire of a tractor. Okay, so in the back of this tractor here is this contraption, and then extending out away from the tractor up here is a boom. This long boom arm out here has a pulley system at the end of it. You can see this tough cable, and you can see some of these logging chains here. And this boom extending out behind the tractor is for skidding logs. For those of you not trashy enough to grow up around lumber equipment, which in fact I only did a little bit of, it's really kind of more my dad's thing. When you skid a log, it's because you've already cut down a tree, but it's far away from the path. It's far away from where you need it to be. It falls, where it was growing. And so then you have to have something to pull it, often up a hill to the path, so you can take that log wherever you need it to be and use it. And that's called skidding. You're skidding a log. And so this boom extends out behind the tractor, reaching towards whatever tree you just cut down, and you need to skid the log back up to the path. And this is protecting what's called the power takeoff. The power takeoff is kind of an outlet down here that you can shift to run off of the tractor engine. So instead of the tractor engine necessarily always driving the tractor and moving the tires, it can also spin the power takeoff. And this power takeoff on this tractor has this amazing log skid on it. And this is literal trash. Where my dad and my grandfather grew up in Ogama, Wisconsin, very Swedish little town. And my grandpa was first generation, Swedish American. They had a lot of logs to skid, and there was a dump, which is another super trashy thing, both conceptually and literally. And the guys at the dump had an even older tractor come through the dump, and they cannibalized it. And this is the rear differential right here of an even older tractor than the Ford 8N on which it rests. And a rear differential is the back part of a car where if you set a brake on one side, it gives all the power to the other side. And if you set a brake on this side, it sends all the power over here. And so this acts as the winch that runs this entire skid steer. And I think it is so clever, and I love it so much, but it is literal trash. And so I think a lot of my conversations about should we call something trash, should we not call something trash, is coming from a very deep place of, I think that this is one of the coolest things I've ever seen and touched and used, and it was from garbage. And definitely it's also called trashy to be the people who have a dump. You have no citywide trash collection. You have to take your own trash to the dump. And then at the dump, there are people there who work there and you know them. And they give your daughter a lollipop whenever you drop off your trash on Saturday morning. And recycling, to be clear. And then, to cannibalize an even older tractor and use it to build a log skid winch on top of another really old tractor is just really magical. And it's literal trash, and people call it trashy. So then part of my defense of how fantastic and amazing these things are is to say, yeah, It is literal trash, and it is the coolest toy in the entire pole shed. Actually, I mean, there are kind of a lot of toys in here. When you live in a family of manufacturing engineers and welders, you end up with all kinds of things like this. This is the cement mixer, homemade. Homemade. Lots of wheelbarrows because, you know, rural life is real. And I just really want to clarify that when I say something is trashy, I think it's an important title to embrace sometimes instead of just get rid of, instead of saying this is not trash. Because it literally was. It was built magnificently from trash by the men who worked at the dump. I think, yeah, let's glamorize trash sometimes instead of saying it's not trash.